The Montgomery County Board of Education Special Call Board meeting Tuesday, July 31st, 2018. Central office now called to order. We do have a quorum with all members present. We'd like to thank, we're glad to see that Ms. Dawkins is back from her.
Thank you. Thank you.
Back.
Glad to be back.
Thank you.
Glad to have.
First of all, we need to have a approval of the revised agenda. Motion, please.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the revised agenda.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we approve the revised agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, those who are in favor, let's see by a show of hands. It is unanimous. First item on the agenda is to receive its information. Superintendent's report, Dr. Moore.
Thank you. The first thing that I want to mention under superintendent's report is the advanced ed report, and I'm going to go through the other two and then let Mr. Roller do some presenting of information regarding advanced ed. But just a quick update, we're still working on our policy manual. I think as we told you before, it's divided into several different sections, and different departments are working on those sections along with an attorney, and we're trying to make sure that we have updated the manual and that we're including any new rules, regulations, procedures, laws that need to be included in that new revised manual. We should have it ready for hopefully a final approval sometimes in October. We will be bringing that to you in sections so that you will be able to, as a board, work through, review, and read those sections prior to our asking you to vote on that particular section until we get the whole thing done. We're going to be opening schools soon. We've been working really fast and furiously around here to try to get grass cut, buildings cleaned up, teachers in place, all of the things that you have to do in order to get ready for school, and it's a lot. So we have to give the people who work here and out in the schools really accolades for the amount of work they're doing. You know, we've combined some schools, we've moved students around, we've had to look at zone lines, and we're hoping that we can pull it off without too many glitches on the first day. I think everybody needs to and will understand that no matter where you are in a school district, on the first day of school, first week of school, you're gonna have a few things that happen that you can't predict, but we're going to have people in place and ready to address those issues as they come up. You also have an invitation to attend our convocation on Thursday of this week, and we have a wonderful speaker. We're going to be working some this year along with other things on culture and climate, and we think that Dr. Gilliam will be the person who can kind of set the tone for how we want to work and operate within our schools and with our students and our parents and with each other and how we treat each other. So I'm looking forward to that presentation. After that, we're going to be involved in a drill at LAMP. You're invited to come to that. I think you've gotten information, Tom, is that correct? Have you sent them anything yet about the, okay. So you know about that, and you'll be housed in the library, and he has all that information for you in the email or text message that he sent to you. But so we're busy working, trying to get things ready to open. Okay, and so if I need to clarify something, let me know, especially about the drill that I'm talking about, and we'll give you some more details. That's on Thursday after convocation. And so with that, unless there's a question or something, we'll move to Mr. Roller, who's going to give you some more details about the advanced ed process and where we are as of tonight.
We got a PowerPoint? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Good evening.
I'm Terry Roller, and I am Chief Administrative Officer say thank you guys for coming out tonight. And I know many of you had questions about what's going on. So we have a PowerPoint here for you, and this will be made available after this evening's presentation. And I hope I'm not blocking too many of you. And you can just follow along with that, and we'll get you caught up to speed after. So as you are aware, the Advanced Ed review came back, I think it was 31st of May. So there was a press conference, there were some standards listed, there were red, yellow, green, and then blue. Those were presented, and there was a lot of dialogue and conversation that followed after that. And then people think we went silent. But what actually took place is that the people were, yes, got busy. And so what we want to do right now is share with you some of the things that are expected and what we're doing and how the process works. And so for us to give you an outline of everything that we're doing, what I would tell you is it's the work of running schools, right? And so Advanced Ed sets the standard of how you run those schools. And so we want to just take an opportunity to just kind of show you. So you gotta have a timeline sort of identifying and indicating where you are and what you're doing, what's expected, and what's going on. I will tell you that these timelines are evolving and changing as we go along. There are committees and groups that we have set up that shares for different parts of what we do. And then as we develop these groups, they create their own timelines. So if there are 6 priorities of the work that needs to be done, and there are 6 heads of each group, that's 6 additional timelines. We can't give you all of those timelines, we give them to you, right? But you would see that things are going on the entire time that we're in school. So this is just a generic, basic timeline of some of the things that we're doing. Again, the Advanced Ed timeline, start talking about what's going on with Advanced Ed with the principals, talk about the training on how we do the evaluations when we walk around and what we call Elliott walkthroughs. So this is just a snapshot that you see of a timeline, right? So there's more to it. You see it's cut off. That's not the end of the timeline. There's more connected to that, but this is just a snapshot of the evidence to show you that timelines do exist, and we're following timelines. I want to take a second just to tell you what I am. So when accountability is going on, and there's intervention going on, there's a person that's approved by the state to come in and oversee this process. That's what we are in right now. I am the person that is in charge of the intervention in Montgomery. Now, this is probably going to be the first and the only time that you hear me say intervention in Montgomery. Okay? But I'm doing that now because I want you to understand how this position works and what's going on. I had a person ask me, who's in charge? Well, according to this, I'm in charge. Here's what I want you to understand. There's no way one person could do any of this. All of the standards call for collaboration, period. So who's in charge? All of the people that are leading the work that's going on. There are teachers leading work, there are principals leading work, there are assistant principals leading work, there are central office staff members leading work, the superintendent is leading work, right? And we work collaboratively while we're doing this. So I want you to understand that during this process, yes, there's someone designated to do that, but we are working in a collaborative effort to get this done. That's the only way to do it. Okay? Tom? I want you to take a brief moment and just look at the roles, okay? There are 6 improvement priorities. There were 31 indicators for Advanced Ed. Those indicators were, performance indicators were grouped together into priority standards, improvement priorities. So there are 6 priorities leading the work. You need to know that there are 6 central office folks leading committees out front directing the work to improve those priorities. Okay, now those priorities are made up of a number of standards. But there are 2 reviews that we're doing. So here's an easy way to put this. You had your Advanced Ed review that we did last year. You received the findings from that on the 31st of May.
those findings listed 31 directives. Those directives we're gonna call our homework. Okay, so we got homework to do. We're gonna do our homework by the time we got those directives in that report given back to us. We're doing our homework right now. Our homework is due in December. That's the first of the reviews. The second review for Advanced Ed will be in May. So while we are preparing for the May review, we have things that must be done by December. That's the work that we're leading right now while planning for the May review. So there are 2 reviews going on. There's one to look at the homework from the one that we did last year. And there's one that they're gonna come back in and check our pulse on at the end of the year. Okay? So you need to know that. That work that we're doing in December is led by those 31 directives. That's what we're working on right now. So by the first week in November, second week in November, we'll submit sort of a review and an update to where we are on those directives, the steps that we're taking, that we've taken. We'll upload evidence, and then after that, we'll write a narrative, we'll give some type of report for Advanced Ed, and then sometime in December, they're gonna come in and check our homework. So you wanna know, what is our plan? I hear it all the time. What is your plan? What are you doing? What is your plan? Here's our plan. Take 31 directives. It'd be foolish to do anything else than those 31 directives. So when those parents are calling us and asking us about our accreditation, we do these 31 directives, we're moving towards maintaining our accreditation. That's our plan. What's our timeline? It's December. They're coming back in December to check the homework from those directives from the first review last year that they presented on the 31st of May. Okay, Tom? So here we go again. What's the plan? We're going to look at the Advanced Ed 9 performance standards that are listed as part of the 6 improvement priorities, which make up 31 directives. Who's good at math? There you go. Who's good with numbers? You want to know what we're doing? That's it. Now, all of you guys have gotten copies of that report. You can go through and look at it. It's the red and the yellows. What does the red indicate? You got work to do. What does the yellow indicate? You've done some of this work, but there's usually not enough evidence to promote that this work is going on like it should be all the time. Right? What's the green? You met the standard. And the blue, you've exceeded. So we're going to be working in all of those areas, but we have 7 performance standards that were highlighted specifically that make up the 6 improvement priorities and 31 directives. That's what we're doing right now. Okay? Well, what is that? That's Dr. Moore and some State Department folks. I don't know if you can tell. The cute one at the bottom is me, the chubby one. But what this does is we've been documenting the process. We're telling our own story in NPS, and we're using social media to do it. Listen, we're very grateful of all of our media folks that are here tonight. We appreciate the support and them helping us tell our story, but we're going to take control of telling our story too. So we're documenting everything that we do along the way in Advanced Ed. So if you don't believe the work we're doing, follow us. You can see everything that we do every single day. We're not hiding anything. This is an example of Dr. Moore meeting with the State Department every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks to ensure that she is in compliance with what intervention is calling for. Okay? Let's talk about improvement priority 1. Review, revise, comply with all board policies and state laws. Here's a directive. You will collaborate with the state intervention team. Right? I'm not going to read all of these to you. This will be provided for you. You can see it up there. All right? You're going to collaborate with the NPS team, the district level staff, and you're going to conduct policy reviews. What did Dr. Moore just say she was doing in her report? We are compiling and reviewing policies. We're going to have a group of policies that were written and put together by the attorneys. We're going to bring those back. We're going to present those. We're going to have groups. We're going to look at them. We're going to strike them. Then we'll put them on the table for approval. That's the process of how this works. You don't do this in isolation, right? But you also don't write policies from scratch. The laws dictate what the policy should be, so we find the best practice, we pull them out, then we get the input from our people. It's a collaborative effort. That's what's going on right now. So can you see that right now? Well, you see that document when she brings it to the table. Okay? So for priority 1, there are 5 directives. I'll go down to 3, 4, and 5. Look at number 3, ensure that all school board policies are aligned with state law. So here's what I want you to understand. This is how easy that is. The legislature passes a law. You update your policy. Period. End of story. The law dictates what you do. Okay? There are some policies that have not been updated since the law changed. You can check those out online. A couple more kind of funny. But that's what we're doing. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can grab right away. So when you ask me, what have you done to improve that directive? We check the law because it's available. We highlighted the policy. We had the experts already give us the version of the updated law so that we can get it on the table for our first reading to update as a policy. All right, Tom? Here's my favorite one. Working to comply. Thank you. I told you I was going to tell you. Working to comply with board governance. Y'all notice anybody in that photo? You notice any of our special friends? Our wonderful leaders? I have 2 board members in there. There are 2 board members that worked with AASB, and they work with the superintendent, and they look at agendas and building the agenda for a meeting that you're sitting in right now. Now you're probably gonna say, what is these probably doing in that? Well, they're part of the process. If we incorporate them in what we're doing, and they have input in what's going on, and they have questions, and they communicate with Dr. Moore, and they go back and forth, they're showing that they are meeting the expectation of good, sound board compliance. That's not doctored, that's an actual meeting that took place, right? Again, you don't believe me, you can follow us. Because everything that we're doing, we're documenting along the way. We almost could show our entire advanced ed directives update in December in photos alone, right? Because everything that we do along the way, we're sharing. Tom? Priority number 2, develop, document, implement, and adhere to the code of ethics and policy which defines the specific roles and responsibilities for members of the school board. Directive 1, participate in and document professional development focused on team building to develop trust and build positive relationships. So you ask me, what are we doing? Well, we're gonna be working with the board in AASB because that's one of the regulatory, governing, support, professional development, and all the other things that they do that works with boards on those issues. So we'll work with them. We'll organize PD. We book PD. What's our role in that? We attend the PD with them. So when they're talking about board training, we're sitting with them. Dr. Moore will be sitting with them. I'll be sitting with them. There may be other staff members that sit with them when it's appropriate for the level and the ideas that they're going through for the particular or specific directive that they're working on. Develop and document a code of ethics and civility expectations and or guidelines specific to the MPS board. Where will that come from? Evaluations, self-reflection. We video all of our board meetings, right? It's easy to document some of those things and come up with those expectations. That's what we want to do for improvement. Tom? So priority 2 has 7 directives. Now remember, there's 6 priorities. This is priority 2. There's 7 directives. Look at number 7, participate in professional development focused on board governance prior to the next engagement review. You want to talk about low-hanging fruit? What's your plan? What are you going to do? And what's the timeline? There it is. Board, number 7, participate in professional development before the next review. When's the next review? December. So how do we get that directive done? Now, can you see us doing that now? Sure, if we were participating in a scheduled, approved board training right now. But that's as easy as booking it, getting their calendars, scheduling it, and attending. That's the plan. Thank you, Tom. Next one.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
One of the things that concerns me you read number 5, school starts next week, and we don't have a self-study.
We've already done that.
When did we do that?
Yeah, your work session,
So
your
we're
homework.
calling that?
Well, it was a self-assessment.
Thank you.
Good. Priority 3, implement a communications plan that ensures timely and consistent dissemination of information, awareness of the systems, decisions, and actions by internal and external stakeholders. 53 schools, right? Every school is a community and a culture in and of itself. You look at Pew Research, it tells you, based on the demographics, the age, the gender, the income, of who lives in that area, what type of social media they prefer to communicate on. Guess what? Your kids already know. Your principals are already doing it. Some of your individual school communities like Facebook. Mine like Instagram. So everything that we did on Instagram, and we tagged it and we posted it to Facebook and Twitter. I don't know if you've been following us, but out of those 53 schools, we now have, I know I got at least 5 new elementary schools following me from last Thursday. Our goal, Tom, can I share our goal?
Go ahead,
May I please share our communication goal, is to have all 53 schools communicating on social media with their communities. Now, how will you know if we're successful? You can measure. 45 out of 53, what percentage is that, math people? I'll let you figure that out. I want 50, at least 50. But that's our goal, to increase opportunities to share what's going on with our community and our stakeholders. Okay? So we have a communication plan that's in place. We just gotta make sure that everybody knows it's out there and what is in it. I'm telling you right now, one of the things that we're gonna do is we're gonna have all 53 of our schools, that's our goal, communicating with their stakeholders in the manner in which they prefer on social media. Because it's quick and easy. That's one of our goals. It's gonna be timely. Right? And if you don't believe that that's how word travels, then something happened here. You don't have to wait on those guys. It'll be on social media. All right? We're going to ensure that principals are accountable for sharing the information. And again, you'll be able to read all these. We're going to provide accurate and timely information to the community. We're going to review and update. Let's look at number 6 on priority 3 before you leave. Review and update board policies concerning communication. So I use this analogy when I talk to people about this one. If our policy says we're gonna send smoke signals about when school closes, what good is that now when everybody's on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook? It's just simple as that. Remove the policy that says we're gonna send smoke signals. That's how easy this is. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit with these directives, right? That's our plan. You wanna know how we're gonna do it and get ready for that December review? We're gonna grab these things that are very easy to touch. Priority 4, foster a culture of student-centered learning that promotes research-based practices, including personalized learning, differentiation, and integration of technology, collaboration, inquiry-based, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Man, this is a tough one. But you want to know one of the areas that we did well in? This. So you know we have good folks working hard to meet the needs of kids, right? We need to expand on that. We need to continue to make sure that we're attracting, recruiting, training, supporting, onboarding, and working with the best people in the business to help our students in teaching and learning. So priority 4 has 4 directives. Priority 5, engage teachers, content area specialists, other instructional staff, in collaborative conversations about curricular processes and instructional expectations. Look at number 2. Establish a means to clearly communicate instructional expectations. All right? So here's what we do, because you guys may not know. You may think that we make these decisions in isolation. Every Monday, Dr. Moore has an executive cabinet meeting. We determine what it is that we're going to do in that meeting. From that meeting, you have a departmental meeting. Those departmental heads take that information and break it down to the people that they touch. From that, we'll have our principals meeting, but we call that our leadership council. All the names are different everywhere, right? So basically, you have that principals meeting, and then from there, that's got to be after the Tuesday, after the Monday, because that's where you get your marching orders at the executive meeting, and then it goes to the departmental head meeting, then it goes to the principal's meeting, and then finally you follow it up with the faculty meeting. System in place. It's not hard, folks. We put the system in place, and we consistently communicate with our folks what the expectations are, whether it be instruction, supervision, organization, operations. Priority 6. Priority 6, develop, implement, and monitor an effective budget process. Here we go. The one I want to take a second to talk about. Recently, we just hired, through the intervention process, Arthur Watts as CFO. Arthur Watts has experience in large urban districts. He has experience in dealing with several $1 million in budget deficit. He's got experience in moving school districts out of intervention. He has experience in operating with state-funded minimums and being lean and not having a lot of locally funded units. That's exactly what we need to be focusing on for our fiscal responsibility. Okay, so you want to ask us what have we done in intervention? Hired one of the best folks in finances. That's what we've done. We've hired one of the best in finances. That's huge, right? To come and take on this challenge and this burden, and it's tough because you're not just talking about dollars, you're talking about individuals. You're talking about the structure and the organization of the culture and the environment in the building. So he's in place. There are 6 priorities and 6 directives for number 6. But let me, this one's important to me, so I'm going to read this one to you. So here's the improvement priority. Develop, implement, and monitor an effective budget process to strategically manage resources to meet current budgetary requirements, allocate human material and fiscal resources in alignment with the system's priorities. So here's what Dr. Watt says. We're going to project and review all district revenues, state, federal, and local funds. So we may communicate and collaborate with the superintendent, district leadership team, board, teachers, principals, and all those involved about the goals of the district. This would allow us to project cost so that we could determine how to align and utilize all funding sources. We're going to provide access and train all principals, directors, department heads, bookkeepers, secretaries on the next-gen McAleer budgeting process. This would provide assurance that all individuals understand and are monitoring their school and department budgets through the budget analysis process. We're going to ensure monthly financial reports are communicated to principals, directors, department heads, community stakeholders, and the board on a monthly basis and provide additional detailed financial information in other meetings and work sessions. We're going to communicate and collaborate with principals regarding the actual number of employees in their building comparable to the number of units earned so that principals may prioritize their instructional staffing needs. Now this is the new guy telling you already what we are going to do. Communicate and collaborate with principals regarding the actual number of support employees in their building comparable to an established baseline tool to support the number of employees. For example, 1 custodian per every 25,000 to 30,000 square feet of a building, right? There are formulas and industry standards and best practices out there that indicate what you should be doing. So in other words, one of the smallest schools in the district doesn't get the same number of custodians as a large school in the district because it's based on the amount of square feet you have to keep clean, okay? We're going to create goals and benchmarks and performance indicators and timelines for response to each directive. So remember when I told you on the first slide that every priority has a chair and that leader works with a group of people and each one of those priority leaders will have their own timelines? Well, here's the finance guy telling you he's going to develop his own timeline of all of these directives that he wants to have done by the December date. There are 6 directives for that priority. And again, we'll have all of this stuff available for you. It'll be available online. But I want to close this in this, and then I'll take your questions, board. This is our plan. I'm going to ask you, all together, when is our timeline? I can't answer. That's what we're working on. You have our plan, you know our timeline, and you know who's in charge. All right, board, questions? Comments? Concerns?
I could say there's a lot of smoke in the room right now. And I'm a little out here, I'm just, I was raised with a dad that said, the road is paved with good intentions. You could sit there and say, I'm gonna, and I cannot tell you how many times I heard you say we're gonna. Okay? It's August. We were given this advanced ed report in May. I have sent you 3 emails just in the last 3 weeks requesting a work session. And you or the superintendent have had calls from people on this board, and we were never called back. The meeting that I'm in a picture of, I would have begged for 5 of those meetings. Y'all gave me 1. And I've really never been up here to take up for this board. But for the first time, I've waited 3.75, almost 4 years to get the board together on certain things. And if you look at the directives, the very first thing, the very first directive under priority 1, the word is collaborate. I used to make fun of our president for saying collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. And I would look at them and go, we've collaborated. What do y'all like? Right now, since May 30th, there has been little to no collaboration. Number 1, between y'all and the board, it says collaborate with the state intervention team. I realize our role as a board is not to micromanage. It is, and I respect you, Mr. Roller. I respect our superintendent. But I respectfully am asking, no disrespect, we've got to collaborate more than we've been collaborating, because how y'all are gonna do this, I mean, we've done, this board is not, I think I can speak for this entire board. Nobody has been communicated with since May, which means we have gone 2 months. And I think at least out of respect for your board, you need to include us in your plans and say, hey, we're learning this the same time each and everybody out there is learning. But yet we have constituents asking us, what are y'all doing? And I'm embarrassed to say, hey, if y'all could just say this, we're working on this, we want to be included. And I've never sat up here in 4 years and ever said what I'm saying now. And I'm frustrated because, if we're gonna, we now need to in what, 3-4 months time? So I'm just slightly frustrated.
Any other questions or comments?
I think she spoke well. I mean, I feel like we've just been put aside, and even with this presentation tonight, I think we're just being set aside, and we're not part of the process. And I mean, the bulk of the directives have to do with board and board policy, and yet we're not a part of it. And that, to me, is a joke. So the majority of us are rotating off. If that's what we're doing, it's just kind of putting us in a holding pattern until you get 5 or 4 more different faces on here. That's fine, but let's be upfront and honest about it. Because otherwise, we're always the ones that get blamed, but yet we're not even part of the process. So I think you know me well enough to know, Ms. Rolla, you stood up and said, I'm in charge. When this doesn't go well,
Absolutely.
we're pointing at you.
Big shoulders.
Because we're
Big shoulders.
not part of this process.
Okay. Well, I can tell you, any other questions or comments? I can tell you that as we're building this, there are different steps and different levels and different parts where people will play greater roles. And I will tell you that there will be opportunity for you to play your role. And when we call on you and say, this is the time, for example, the things that call for board members to participate in trainings, there you go. We're gonna be calling you. But we're putting those things in place while starting the beginning of a school year. Let us not forget, we have 30,000 kids coming in a few days, okay? And so when you're calling your May timeline out, that was May 31st. So you're talking about June and July. While June and July is going on, we're hiring 150 certified and classified personnel, transferring, retiring, moving those folks around all day, every day. So the operation of the school is still going on while we're doing all of this. So I'm telling you now, absolutely. So I won't say gonna again, but there's a role and a place and a time for each and every one of you to emerge into what you're supposed to be doing. Okay? And that time is coming. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to, first of all, say that we certainly don't want to make board members feel like we're putting them in a holding pattern until somebody new comes along. Because this process, whether somebody's new or already on the board, is going to continue, no matter who's sitting at the board table. So that's not at all what this is about. We couldn't possibly have that thought in mind. But if I could give you one example, if you look at priority one, which says review, revise, and comply with all board policies and state laws. And then if you look at the directive, the first directive says collaborate with the state intervention team, MPS superintendent, and MPS district level staff to conduct and document a policy audit. That does not mean that the board does that hands-on every day. That is the responsibility of the superintendent and the staff to revise and get those policies ready to bring to you as a board. Because we're the ones who have been trained, who've been educated in school law, who deal with policymakers, who deal with the legislature, who deal with the state superintendent, and all those folks all the time. And so if we sat and waited for a board to sit and write a whole book full of policies, it would take probably years to get that done. So part of our responsibility is to expedite that, get the draft ready, bring it to you, so that you then can review that with us. That's where the collaboration comes in. It's not intended, I don't believe, for you as a board to have to sit and write board policy hands-on. I don't think that's what that's about. So it's not an attempt to keep you out of it, but it is an attempt to allow us as a staff and the superintendent and the intervention person to do what we're required to do, and then bring it to you in an effort to collaborate. And if you look at it and read it and you see words in there that don't make sense, or you don't understand it, or you might have another way of saying it, if possible, under the laws, we can change it, then we can make it work. But that is the way that we work with you to collaborate, and it's very clearly stated in directive number 1, that all of us work on it, and at some point then we bring it to you as a board, and the final part of that is that you approve it as a board. But I don't believe, unless I'm incorrect, that it's expected that you will sit down and do hands-on, write all those policies and bring them forward. I think that's part of our job and our role as the people who work for you and who work for the school district.
Well, if I could add this, just one other thing. You had mentioned, this is not a put down, but you had mentioned that there were 6 committees. And that's fine and good, but I would love to know what the committees are. You know, it would be nice, and let me finish this, okay? The other thing is, and I just want this to go on record, when you mention a timeline, by waiting till, you know, today, I mean, well, tomorrow's August 1, okay? And when I have suggested through emails, through meeting with y'all, a reduction as far as, you know, the least, whatever, not, if you looked at the central office non-tenured, okay? And y'all said that you had to have a 1.2. And I found this today and actually brought it here. This is something the state gave us, okay? This came, you know, and I realized there's been different superintendents. They drew this little thermometer. The very first thing on this thing, it says task to consider, personnel cuts, non-tenured central office. I just thought I'd bring that in here. And it doesn't matter how many times I've brought it up, what it sounds like, you gotta look at, we have less students, but they told us at the advanced ed meeting that we had 44 central office people making 6 digits, okay? And, I mean, they didn't say that as, hello, here's a popsicle. They were making it as, hello, this is a concern. And I just think the board or some of our concerns need to at least be heard. Doesn't mean they need to be done, but we don't even get to talk about it. And we're just kind of shut up on it, and we don't even get to discuss it. And that, to me, is unfair to us as a board, to not even be able to bring it up.
Thank you. Mr. Porterfield, questions about your presentation today?
Well, I was just sitting here and I was listening, and you said, I hope the figures are right, you said we had about 30,000 students this upcoming year? 29? Okay, well, I want Andrew to make sure that you make a note that they're not losing 500 a year to 800 a year. I think Pike Road is somewhat stabilized now, and Montgomery County is somewhat stabilized now, so.
That's just been the average over the past.
Well, we're not losing as many students as been propaganda that's placed out there. It's just in this report. I just want to make sure we get the facts out. Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. And we'll bring you up to date attendance numbers as we get the first couple of weeks in. There are no shows and transfers and folks that moved, and so we'll have up to date attendance and enrollment there after we get school started. Thank you.
Okay, the next item, officer manager, opening school. Okay, now it's the late.
In June financial report, Ms. Brenda Palmer.
Good job. Good evening.
I am going to give you the May and June financial report, as it stands, as of June 30th, 2018. Okay, for the month of April, you'll look at the S1 report, S1 and A report. Your top cover sheet gives you the notes to the financial statements for May to let you know what our assets and liabilities were. Our total fund equity on the S1 report for May is a balance of $22,311,542. That consists of all the financial work that our district has received. The F2 report that gives you your beginning fund balance and what your ending fund balance will be. And there's a typo, I just recognized it, and I apologize for that typo. The ending fund balance for May 30th of 2018 is $22,311,542.89. That's your report. And you'll see that our revenues and expenditures, we're still receiving in revenues from tax and property tax and from our county commissioners. And so your top cover sheet for each month explains what each category is and helps you follow along with the financial report. Okay. Same thing on the June 18th report. It is a very short report. Our ending fund balance did increase a little bit. Like I said, we're still receiving in taxes and tags and all from the county commissioner's office. And our ending fund balance for June 30th, another typo on that one, is $29,794,677.68. All of our bank recs have been reconciled up through the period of June 30th. Our local schools are uploaded up through May because we had 2 school closings. We have to audit and, upload all of those 2 schools, Georgia, Washington, and Philadelphia. And those are in the process of being uploaded. At the time I had this report, they were not uploaded. But as of today, they are uploaded. Are there any questions or concerns?
I'm looking at the total in fund balance for month of June being 29,787,000. cents. My thoughts along that line is, we got an ending fund balance of $29,794,617.68. If we subtract the 9.5 million, we would still be within the 4 million more than what we were supposed to have as a 1 month fund balance, wasn't it? Huh?
At this point.
At this point, we would still have the 4 million more than the required 18 million that we are by law should have.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, that's.
But keep in mind, there's still some expenditures out there.
From incumbents. Okay. Ms. Bowman, I'd just like to say this to you. You know, we were in a real fix. And you stepped up to the plate. And we appreciate all of the work you've done within the finance department to keep us afloat. And we appreciate all your service that you rendered to this board during the time that we were without someone that could lead the district as far as the financial officer. Thank you for your service.
And the teachers never miss the payroll, never miss a check.
Wait a minute.
I said the teachers and staff never miss a check.
Oh, absolutely no.
So you have to have a balanced budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I have one question. Since you've been, and thank you so much, and you know, I probably have bugged you more than anybody. But are you, when you're doing our budget, do you anticipate any, decreases in our revenues? I know that, I forgot who brought up the loss of students, which now we found out there's still a loss of 500 students. But are there any other revenues that we can expect to kind of, not be funded at the amount it used to be funded?
And
Yes,
so we're funded according to our count and the units that we earn. Right now, we, don't see any, we're not predicting anything right now. We're just gonna stay up with what we have and try to keep that in balance.
And the reason I brought that up, and since I have you before you take your next position, I know that there's going to be some schools, I guess conversions and the conversion charters, and I know that we'll lose, is it Davis, am I off the mark? Yes, no. Let me just wait and ask that question later. Okay.
Who paid that?
Well, that was what the state said, I wanted to know if that's still something that's going on.
Okay, are you going over the salary schedule? I know we do have a copy.
Salary schedule that was submitted for FY19, budget, we will get a each employee will get a 2.5% raise. And that will be the new salary schedule that's in effect, October 1, that raise will be effect October 1 for all employees.
So what was in our packet, was that the new salary schedule?
That is the new salary.
That is the new.
Review for FY19. Thank you.
Okay, again, thank you, Ms. Bowman. Next item on our agenda is 2018-19. Grade promotion, retention, updates, changes. Ms. Christie Hatch.
Good evening. I don't think the microphone's working too well. I'll use my teacher voice. I am here again. This is a yearly thing for me to present to you any changes or updates in our grading, promotion, and retention handbook. And you've gotten a copy of it, and it's up here. And I have highlighted anything that has changed from last year to this year. So I was just going to briefly only go over things that have changed from then to now. And the first thing that changed is the very first page, the preface. This is a book that never had a preface, and it was our committee brought the idea of actually putting a page in the front to describe the book, what is it for, and what the expectations of this book are. So that's that page, the very first one. And I think you've had a chance to review it, so I'm gonna slide on through. The next one is on page 4. And we are transitioning into an online, we're encouraging the teachers to use Google Classroom. We're a Google district. And so a lot of the teachers are using the online platform. So we wanted to kind of establish an expectation to try to prevent any problems. we wanted to make sure that if they had any due dates for the students, that those are actually due during the school day. We had a little bit of a problem with some teachers having it due, turn it in by midnight on Sunday. Well, that could could lead to some problems for some students if they have trouble having access to it, and then the teacher has to deal with some late assignments. So we wanted to make sure that anything that they have to do is due during school hours. So that's where that came from. On the next page, same idea, the digital gradebook, and this is again in the iNow program, that there aren't any empty cells in the gradebook. And that is so we can ensure that every student has had the opportunity to complete every assignment. And we had some that just had some blanks and some zeros with no explanation. And sometimes we'll have students with 2 grades and just a whole bunch of blanks in there with no notes or no teacher indication of why those, were they absent or anything like that. So we wanted to have a good record. This is just good record keeping for the teachers to have for the students.
Hold on there. Let me ask you this. When you say these cells, if you look at the one above F, even though there's not anything added, I had I think an administrator, teacher, somebody called me today, and she raised a really good question. Obviously, she had looked at this. But if you're looking at F, it says that, each teacher is supposed to have 4 different major grades, 9 different minor grades, which adds up to 13. On your front sheet with your preface, bullet number 2, says grading must be as consistent as possible from teacher to teacher and from school to school within the district to assure fairness. Okay, in those cells, are there 13 cells for 13 grades? I mean, do they have
So
to
they
put
can
something?
have more, if you read on in F, because teachers may want to give more than that.
Right, and that's not my question. Is there at least 13?
Yes, that is the expectation.
Okay, because see, this is what she brought up, and it was a very good question. I've seen it before. You get these teachers, some of your teachers will put in like 2 or 3 grades. The child fails. When we find out that they haven't given the 13 grades, there's 9 grades. I know in my day it was 9 grades. And that was 2011. Technically, what are the consequences? What do we tell these parents when we find out this teacher only has 2 grades? I mean, can the parent appeal? Because, I think that's it was a great question. I told her I'd bring it up at the board tonight.
That is an excellent point. That's another reason why we put this preface in here, so that they will know, the teachers know that this is what even though we've gone through it every year, we still have teachers that give 2 grades, or they don't.
And so what do we do then?
That becomes a disciplinary action in a school-based.
My thing is, that should be a disciplinary responsibility on behalf of the principal, who is the overseer of that site, relative to those teachers that are working in this building. And that principal should ensure that every teacher is doing what is expected, and that teacher has a relationship grading, retention, promotion package here.
Right, and there's actually a number in here that says that there's that expectation of monitoring of it.
Hey, Ms. Cash, what about, I know a lot of the teachers that are AP teachers, they say, well, that's a lot of grades the way that AP is done, so what do we do about that?
We have, let me find it, I should know this backwards and forwards, but there is an expectation, if you look on page 8, number 4, letter B. I've been in this document way too long to be able to find that fast. But if you notice that there's an expectation of how many days the teachers have to grade it and get it in now,
Right.
there has been some allowances made for AP teachers.
Good.
They have to meet, they're expected to meet the same numbers, and we even communicated with College Board about that and asked them if they had any suggestions, and they did not have any problems with R9 and 4.
Okay.
But we did give them some allowances because they're grading a lot of essays.
Right.
So we gave them a couple of extra days to get those essays graded.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Ash, before we move on, still same page, letter B. I did have a question where it says teacher must document that a review of the student's performance and formal intervention have been completed, and that is,
Wait, where are you?
on page 5, letter D.
Okay.
D?
D, as in dog.
What line?
First line at the top. I just had a quick question. This also, and it may kind of go into RTI as well.
That's exactly what that is,
Yeah.
yes.
Will that take place, is this going to be systematically like more across the board, including like our magnet schools? I know I've had a few phone calls and so.
It should be, and I've had some discussion with the magnet school, lead person, so that we can have some more conversations. Magnet school, so that, we are closer in line with all of the schools across the district. And then one other thing I wanted to add was that if a parent notices, because they are able to monitor grades, if they notice in their monitoring that there are only 2 grades throughout the year, at some point, it would be great to call the principal and or other subject matter people to ask what's going on in that particular place, school, teacher, what's going on with that, because, we're saying we should have more than 2 grades in there, and that's for everybody.
All right, continuing on page 6, letter I. Elementary grades always had to use the category average method, and we gave secondary teachers a little bit of leeway to count by the points. So if you have something that was a major grade, you do out of 100 points or out of 50 points. And that statistically has not been consistent throughout the district. And if you take the same grades and you base them on the category points versus category average, the student on category points is actually at a disadvantage rather than category average. So we wanted it to be consistent, because maybe one teacher would think, I want to count this out of 10 points, but you know, that's so subjective. So we wanted to make everything out of category average. It just helps with consistency in grading. All right, letter J, each graded assignment must be reported in the digital grade book. Again, this all ties in, but the language is just being very clear to the teachers with the expectation. And then, so that little sentence was added in, that's the only new part. But the last part, that the referencing standard in the activity name, that has to be attached to the activity. And that's simply a matter of going into iNowChalkable, and when they do a name of the activity, they can tie in, they're expected to tie in the standards. And the great thing about that is we can do a standards-based report card, and we can immediately tell what standards that the student is struggling in. But the teacher has to attach the standard for us to be able to do that. So that's why we put that language in here. On page 7, letter R, we were asked to add this in with, as far as access grades, because we just wanted, this is the practice that we've been following, but we didn't have a record of it. So we added in that students doing work with access will have just the 1 grade, because they're doing work online. And so the online teacher reports the final grade, and then that's what goes into iNow. They have more than 1 grade that they're doing through the online platform, and their parents can have access to their progress report at any time, but they'll have 1 official grade that will come through the, I think it's called the D2L, online from the State Department to our iNow. So we just wanted to put that in just to educate the process of it. And letter S, all of that's the same about how long you have to keep the records. We added it in because we're going to Google platforms. We wanted to make sure that those records are kept for a year, that you don't go back and delete your classroom, so that we can have a record of the work that the students were doing. And let's see, we took out any option for teachers to do direct entry, because then if the teacher does direct entry in iNow, it doesn't match the grade book, and there should be no reason why a student's grade should not be reflected in the grade book. That's just inaccurate record keeping, so we added that. On page 8, we've already talked about letter B, but again, this is more, we're going to online blended learning, so we added this in, that the expectation applies to online work as well. The next one, these are there's some big changes for elementary and middle school. And before, it was for students in grades 3 through 5 and 6 through 8 could pass math, English, and either science or social studies. But the expectation now, because we don't want a student to be passed up that is not ready, so they have to pass all four courses. And that's become common practice, and we wanted, it's a good practice to have, not to pass up the students, but to make sure they're prepared in all of their courses. All right, moving on, the next one is on page 15. And we, number 13, letter B, you know, we learned through experience, and we had some experience this year that we needed to be sure to follow the amount of clock hours in our summer school. So we added this in as just the expectation of what, this is just copied from the Code of Alabama, saying what the summer school expectations will be. Let's see, the next, that has more. On page 16, our counselor asked us to, the district level person who helps all of our counselors asked us to add this in, and it's the expectation of having, when you have a transfer student, getting those records in there on their transcript in a very timely manner. On page 19, this talks about the interstate compact agreement. If you remember, we added this in last year as an awareness piece. We found that we needed to add United States in there because we have a lot of Air War College parents who felt that they were entitled to all of these same supports, that this is really for our own United States uniform services. And that's the practice that we've been following. Again, it's the law, so we just had that in as an awareness. But we wanted to add United States so we know that that's who we're dealing with. And then next, this part is taken from Marzano's research. We have a lot of students now transferring in with that have different grading scales. And so they may have just an A+, and so we have schools calling the Office of Curriculum asking, well, what is an A+? So, or they're on this 3.75, if that's their grade on their report card, what does that mean? So we did some research and found a nice table to help guide the schools in translating other standards-based report cards. I'm going to move on all the way to page 27. Letter C on that page talks about kindergarten report cards, and we transitioned last year into, and it was a work in progress last year, and so we had a certain number of grades for the first 9 weeks and second 9 weeks. So now that we're all on the same page and everyone's been trained, the expectation for all 9 weeks was set, and that's what that is. Page 31 is dealing with middle school students. And this just is in reference to students who are earning a Carnegie unit. Because they're earning a Carnegie unit the same that students in high school are earning, the expectation needed to be the same. So they are expected to take a semester and a final exam just like they would if they were in high school earning that same Carnegie unit. So this will be a teacher-made test, and they will follow the same 40-40-20 calculation that the high school students would follow. The next page, page 33. Number one, really the only part that's new, I added in this however, and then this statement is new. We had, of the high school principals, wanted to add this in as an expectation for AP students. They found that the AP students were signing up for the class because they wanted the weighted grade, but they weren't willing to take the exam. And that skews our data for our AP success. It also gives them a little bit of an unfair advantage to the other students. The barrier to this was there is a cost to the AP exam, but because we're now a Title I district, we get that funding for it. And our magnet schools were the only ones that weren't included, that they've already talked, and they are going to we will find the money to pay for them, so it will not be a cost to the students.
That is exciting, because it was like $80 a class. And I remember, when you have 7 AP classes.
Yes. So at all of the traditional schools, there's not a cost involved in it at all. At a magnet school, there's a fractional cost, but that will be funded. So they'll have to take the test to get the weighted grade. That doesn't mean they have to pass it, but there is the expectation that they will take the exam. The next thing is because we're transitioning into 8-period days, that had to be, they are able to earn 1 extra credit, so these numbers had to be adjusted. And then we also added in that they have to pass their ELA and math in order to go to the next grade level. Because we had some situations where the students were earning the credits but not passing their core courses, so then we had students sitting up in 11th and 12th grade still taking 9th grade, but they were counted as a senior. So we wanted to be sure to add that in so that we can get an accurate, keep accurate track of our cohorts.
So Ms. Match, we're gonna have 8 periods?
Yes.
And how long are the periods?
It is, is it a 102-minute period? It's almost like a block schedule, but if you're familiar with what BTW does, they do AV days. That's what they're doing in the high schools. They're like a JD, they're calling it Green Day, Gold Day. And so they'll go one schedule 1 week, and then they rotate it and have another schedule the next week. It's gonna, we hope that it's going to be very, very beneficial because we are able to then put some intervention time in, and if there are some students that are struggling, we can build a double period math or a double period English for them. It gives more flexibility in the schedule. The last couple of things, page 38, we just wanted to put that in just so that everybody could have a checklist of what's expected for graduation. And then the last thing, page 42, that came from our legislature, and that was the civics test. They passed a law saying that the students have to pass a civics test in order to graduate. And so they have, it's district developed, and it's basically based on the immigration test that citizens people have to pass in order to gain citizenship. So they will have multiple times to take it. It'll start this year, and then it's not a grade, it's just a pass or a fail that goes on their transcript. And they will have multiple times to take it throughout this year, and they have lots of resources that they planned it out. They planned it all last year to implement it this year for those seniors. Any questions on it?
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Just a quick comment, I'd like to say, if you remember, we had a report on the civics test earlier, maybe a month or so ago. Bring you up to speed on that. There's been a lot of work that went into developing this document. Lots of staff people talking, meeting, doing research on what's out there, what we're responsible for, what we're required to do, and then also an attempt to increase the rigor along with giving our students the resources that they need to support them as we move into increasing rigor and additional responsibilities for our students. So this is a reflection of all that work that's been done.
Yes, our principals did a great job because they communicated this with their faculty, and then they came back with input on all of these changes.
Well, again, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is the executive session. Good name of Clarendon. The board will now go into executive session to discuss good name of county. We should be in executive session approximately like 15 minutes, and during the executive session, no votes will be taken. At this time, let's go to it. Okay. We need a motion to go into executive session.
Mr. President, I move that we go into executive session in regards to good name and character.
Then we'll talk in a second, that we go into executive session, and then discussion. Those who are in favor, let's see by show of hands. It is unanimous.
Do we need to take any
We will now convene the special call meeting. No votes were taken during the executive session, and at this time, we shall move to the board action items. Superintendent Moore.
Okay, we'll start with the intervention minutes, so that they will become a part of the record. That is just as, for your information. Intervention personnel minutes, July 31st, 2018.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the superintendent's recommendation for the intervention minutes dated July 31st.
Sir, Ms. Dean, my understanding, we don't have anything to do with approving that one.
We don't have to do that?
Board action.
It's on board at action.
Is it a board action? Well, not the, it's just memorialized. It's not board action here. It's not listed on our agenda.
Yeah, it is. It's written right there.
Where?
All right,
That's
let's just.
personnel
Highlighted,
certified. That's not.
Never mind.
All
right.
It sure is. I'm looking at the wrong report. I'm looking at the wrong page.
Never mind.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay,
Moore.
so now we'll move to the personnel report, certified personnel and addendum. And on the certified, I would like to hold on number 64 and number 63, I'm sorry, remove that from the items that you're gonna vote on, 64 and 63. Am I doing that right? 26.
Hold on, let me understand something.
26, 64, 63.
Okay, hold on just a minute. Hold on.
That's it, I have it. Just here. Yeah.
Okay, so, again, if I'm correct on this, we're gonna hold 126, 64, and 63,
Correct.
okay?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the personnel report, certified personnel omitting 63, 64, 126, and addendum 1.
Second.
It is moved and properly second that we accept the superintendent's recommendation of the personnel certified report and addendum 1. Is there any discussion? Those who are in favor, let's see by show of hands. Okay, 6. Those who oppose, 1. Abstentions? 1.
Okay, moving on to item C. I recommend approval of the personnel report, support personnel.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the recommendation of the superintendent on the personnel report, support personnel.
It's a lot of personnel.
It's a lot.
Support personnel. Terry?
Whatever.
Come on, we got it.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we accept the superintendent's recommendation of the personnel report support. Is there any discussion? Those who are in favor, let's see by show of hands. It is unanimous.
Item D, I recommend approval of the board minutes for May 30th, June 12th, July 11th, and 12th, 2018.
All right, Mr. President, I move that we approve the board minutes for May 30th, June 12th, July 11th, and 12th, 2018.
Second.
It has been moved and properly second that we accept the, huh?
Discussion.
Discussion, go ahead.
Editorial, you listed Durden as she.
Oh, my God.
She.
All right, wait.
He is wearing pink tie.
It's just a typo.
Typo.
I would
Durden, you didn't catch that?
appreciate that.
Durden, you didn't catch that?
Somebody's looking out for you, sir.
I appreciate it.
I read everything.
Somebody-
Well, that's a
She
good thing,
does.
that's a good thing.
Carry your mother.
Well, I appreciate Mr.
Those-
Byers picking that
Those
up.
who are in favor, let's see by show of hands. It is unanimous.
Okay, item E, I recommend approval of the bid report.
Okay. I didn't call words.
Mary, make a motion. Make a
I
motion.
didn't, I'm sorry I was talking, I was being rude. What happened?
You-
We're
We're
trying
waiting
get
on you to make a
somebody
motion.
to move on the bid report. I'm waiting on them.
I have a question on that, Dr. Moore. I noticed that it says, Finance and Business Administration. Is this something new?
This is the department that purchasing falls under.
But we've not had this before, and I remember reading something about putting somebody in as finance administrator and administration and all that.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, is this a way that we're bringing it in, or will we see this again? It's different from our other bid reports.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm saying procurement.
Yeah, this is prepared by Mr. Rudolph, and he falls, as I understand it right now, under the business department. And so this is just his new way of putting a cover page on his bid reports. So his finance and business administration, that's the area, and he's under procurement, which is the
So
purchasing.
he still works with the finance, he's not
Yeah.
the business administrator?
No, ma'am, he's still under the business person.
Just for my information.
Okay.
Mr. President, I move that we approve the bid report.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second that we accept superintendent's recommendation of the bid report. Is there any other discussion? Those who are in favor, will see by show of hands. What do you say about my pen?
Before we adjourn, I heard from from Ms. Palmer, these budget hearing dates are going to be changed somewhat, and we will give you the information about those for future reference. Yes.
I'm not going to do it. We just adjourn. Since there are no other discussions on items, this meeting is now adjourned.
Mr. President,
Yes,
our
I
last
did.
board
Oh, my
meeting.
God, yes.
Want to thank you for
Yeah.
keeping us out of as much trouble as possible.
Well, it still didn't help Durden anyway. Still got that.
I agree
Well,
with
we
that.
appreciate you, though.
She has
Really,
been a
you've done
real
great job.
asset
You
to
really
me in coming in.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you very much for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.